We were just talking about it the other day. Like when we started, he said in 5 years, I want us to be like not fully where we want to be, but I want us to be like it. Like I want us to be there, and I want us to like be set up, be established, be level 4 trainers, and 5 years later, here we are, I guess.
You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to The Ride, a bi-weekly podcast brought to you by Horse and Rider Magazine, co-hosted by Nichole Chirico and Devin Conley. In each episode, we chat with some of the industry's top trainers, clinicians, horsekeeping experts, and professionals to share inspiring stories, training philosophies, and the importance of living your best Western horse life.
This episode is brought to you by Horse and Rider On Demand on Ride TV. Want to sharpen your skills, stay motivated, and elevate your riding? With Ride TV, you can access expert training videos anytime, anywhere. Immerse yourself in the Western lifestyle with exclusive shows and live streams of top events. Plus, don't miss our new masterclasses featuring pros like Bud Lyon and Brad Barkemeyer, teaching everything from ranch riding to reining and rein cow horse techniques, and so much more. Visit ridetvgo.tv and use code THERIDE for 15% off your first month.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Ride. This is your host, Nichole Chirico, and today we are here with NRHA Level 4 Futurity winner, Kaci O'Rourke. She is an NRHA professional and just recently won the NRHA Futurity, and she is the first woman to ever do it. So thank you so much, Kaci, for coming on and talking with us. I know it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks as you get home from Oklahoma City.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So our audience is a more general performance horse audience or just horse owner audience. So for those who may not be familiar with the reining as much or familiar with your background in the reining, besides the fact that your name is everywhere on social media right now as the winner of this year's Futurity, can you talk a little bit about your background with horses and growing up in the horse industry? I know you came from a showing background before you went professional.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was fortunate enough to grow up on a horse ranch. My family owns and operates the largest kind of horse ranch east of the Mississippi, so in Castleton, Vermont. So I grew up riding all kinds of different horses. We lease like over 900 horses a year all across the East Coast. Like Disney, they get their horses from us, the Boston Police, NYPD, like a ton of different, so I grew up riding a lot of different kinds of horses and definitely had an appreciation for all kinds of horses. We put on, rodeos throughout the summer. So, my background was pretty well cemented in appreciating all different kinds. But, I had a all around horse when I was younger. I'd dipped my toe in the barrel racing. It wasn't really for me. But when I was around 12, my dad would get in, different horses that came from different backgrounds, and he got in a really nice reining 3-year-old. And for me, when I got on that horse just to ride, it was like the brokest horse I'd ridden. it was so fun. It was so cool. The thing that really attracted me to the reining is that it's really the only sport that those horses, they do things that are so athletic and so dynamic, and the maneuvers are so fun, but then they also have such an element of obedience and such a great mind. They can go from doing something so intense and dynamic to being just loping around on a loose rein as quiet as could be. And so that's what really drew me to the reining. The other thing that really drew me to the reining, just seeing it from that perspective, is, reining horses, they could always, when my dad would get the reiners in, and they were like the ex-reiners, the lower level reiners, but they always found a good job somewhere. They could always do something. They could always transition to do something else. And to you get anybody on a reining horse and it's just the coolest feeling ever. So that's what kind of got me into it. But I showed, as a youth rider, from 12 to 18, and, we traveled a lot and, missed a lot of days of school. I still had to keep up with my schoolwork, but like, didn't go to one of my proms, missed all that stuff, but I was just so into the showing. I was so dedicated to that. I mean, that was my thing. So about like when I was like 15 or 16 years old, I kind of really had a feeling that I really wanted to train horses for a living. Like that's really what I wanted to do. Um, so and thankfully, my parents, my family was, behind me with it. I think I'm sure they were a little nervous about it, but, they were all behind me for sure.
That's really cool. I knew that you had come from the horse showing. Obviously you were showing reiners as a youth rider, and just hauling across the country. I homeschooled so that I could haul all over the place
Yep.
and missed my prom and did all that. So I can totally relate to that, but horses were all I cared about. So,
Yep.
it's really interesting. I didn't know that your family had such a wide range of horse experience. I mean, from everything from like police horses to rodeo to Disney. I mean, how was that growing up kind of helped mold you as a rider, just being able to experience so many different aspects of horse ownership and riding? Because I'm sure you're able to apply, even if it's just a small piece of what you learned when you tried, I don't know, barrel racing or the all around, or how were you able to apply that to your own riding?
Well, for one, I think it's really special, like having an appreciation for all kinds of horses. I mean, knowing like even if we start a 2-year-old and it's not, the top level reining horse, I mean, it still has a place somewhere and it still has a future. It may not be, with us, but it still has a future somewhere. So I think that that's really important, I think. But also, I mean, just general horsemanship. I mean, when you're around that many horses young, you get a pretty good idea, a feel for a horse, a feel for their mentality, feel for what they're telling you. Training is really like being able to communicate with a horse really, really well, and being able to understand, what their eye is saying, what their expression is like. And I feel like I mean, it's helped us even with like taking out yearlings. My husband and I both like love that part of it, but I mean, both of us have come from very diverse like horse backgrounds. And I think being able to see a horse as an individual and see a horse for what it is and, reading its expression and stuff, I think that's been invaluable to us.
We're going to talk a little bit later about you and your husband's business because I think it's really cool how much of a partnership it is and how you guys complement each other so well. But kind of going back to your transition from non-pro youth status to professional, you said when you were around 17, 18, you knew that the horses were what you wanted to do with your life. How did you start your journey working as an assistant trainer? You've worked for some incredibly legendary horse trainers along the way before going out on your own.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did get a scholarship to Oklahoma State on the equestrian team, and that was the route I was going to go. I was like relatively pretty good in school, like, but, among other things, I just kind of realized pretty early on, like in the first or second semester, it just really wasn't quite for me. Um, it's a great program, but among other things, I wanted to be training, horses. I felt like I was a little behind. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that like, I needed to go work for somebody. That's, when I was there as well, I don't think anybody in that environment really believed that I was going to go, be a horse trainer like I said I was. I'm sure there's plenty, people that say that and don't mean it. So I felt like I really needed to go learn from somebody. So I literally like flipped through the Rainer, and I just started calling people. I mean, it's really just about, and I think that's happened several times in my life, and I think it's really important to just be willing to just like jump off the ledge and just go for it. And I called, several people. I knew I really kind of wanted to be in Texas. My dad, comes out here kind of regularly. So I wanted to still be able to see him. but I wanted to go where the very best of the best was and really jump outside my comfort zone. So, I called Casey Dairy was one of them. My dad and I came out, we drove to a couple places and talked to people. And really Casey was kind of the first one to let me come. So I went home, packed my stuff, and we drove out. And, to be honest, like I started with the mentality, and keep in mind, like I had won around, 40, 50,000 by the time in the non-pro and youth. I'd won the NAAC 2 years in a row. Like I'd had a relatively successful show career, but I came into it willing, like I didn't care if I was going to clean stalls. I didn't care what I was going to do. Like I had no expectations from them. I didn't care if I got like, I needed to live, but I didn't really care what I got paid. I just wanted to go and learn and be involved and feel like I was moving forward. And I wish, more people would have that mentality. It doesn't mean undervaluing yourself, but it just means like, look, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get in the right circles and to get around the right people and learn what I need to learn. And so, my time with Casey, at Dairy Performance Horses was great. I mean, I was there for about 5 years. It was a awesome, amazing learning and growing experience. Being able to be in that caliber of a program, I think just like cemented in me, like, this is what I want to do. And if I'm going to do it, I want to be the best or in the best that I can be, certainly. I've never wanted to, settle for just being okay. So that's kind of something that kept driving me. I was fortunate to be around, we had a really good group of us assistants there at the time. A lot of, and a lot of them, they're my peers now and they're wonderful. So I think when you're around people that are better than you, as good as you or better than you, it just pushes you to be better.
So you were with Casey, did you say 5 years?
Yep, about 5 years. In 2018, I went to work for Craig.
Okay, so you were at Casey's, and then how long were you at Craig's for?
About 2 years, almost 2.
Okay, cool. So like, obviously those are two of some of the biggest names in reining. Even for those who maybe aren't familiar with the NRHA or follow it as closely, they know those names. Can you talk a little bit about how their mentorship kind of helped you mold your own training program, like kind of helped you figure out how you wanted to ride and work as a professional in the industry?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely Casey was really patient with me. I mean, you have to remember, I think, you're in your very early 20s, like teens and into 20s. I mean, that's your time to grow as a person, like not just as a rider, like you're trying to figure life out and grow as a person. And so, that was a really important time, I think, for me. I kind of watched and learned a lot about like the business, like how, they conducted their business, like what it took. I was fortunate to be with Casey when he won the Futurity on She's Out of Your League, and won the Derby on She's Out of Your League, and I think he won the Derby on Magnum Starlights. Like we had a lot. It was a really great time. So I got to be behind the scenes when we were experiencing, that kind of success. And so you're getting to see what it takes and what you want to be. And I learned a lot, from Casey's program. Now, like Casey and Craig's training program per se is, different. So I think it helped me, kind of find something for me that I liked that was kind of in the middle. When I went to work for Craig, I always admired how broke he was able to get his horses. I mean, his horses are tremendously broke. I mean, anyone can ride them. He's an incredibly consistent, showman and consistent in the product that he puts out on all levels. So, I think, when I got there, it was an intense program. But it was something that I really liked. I really liked his, 2-year-old program and the structure that was with it. So I think that kind of enabled me to kind of step up to another level and, training wise, and just, learn some different tools.
So let's kind of fast forward to you've gone out on your own. Your husband, Jack Daniels, he is your partner in your business as well. And you guys really complement each other. You know, you've talked a little bit in other interviews about how he is so good with the young horses. And then you obviously have a killer showing background. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys kind of formed your own training business to fit your strengths?
Yeah, so I mean, we both met at Craig's. We both worked for Craig at the same time. So that kind of just happened. When when we left, and we, decided to kind of start our own business, um, we definitely started with a focus on the 2-year-olds because, like I said, he's extremely gifted with the young horses. Both of us really enjoy it, but he's tremendous at being able to communicate with a young horse, create respect, and create a sense of allowing that horse, like teaching that horse to allow us to tell them what to do without getting those horses scared. And he can just create a really great bond with those young horses. So that's kind of where we started. I mean, in the beginning, obviously, you're taking whatever anybody sends you, but we were kind of fortunate to get some pretty good customers right off the bat. And in fact, like 3 of them at least, 3 of our first customers are still with us today. And one of them was the one that owns the fireman. So, it was those people that, believed in us early on. Having said that, I think both of us took one thing from, Craig and Ginger. Craig and Ginger have owned several of their own horses, that they've done really well on, Face the Attitude was one of them. But I didn't want to wait for somebody else to rely on somebody else to give us the opportunity. We knew we needed opportunities. We knew we needed good horses. And if people would see us on good horses, they would send us good horses. One other thing that was really important to us when we did go out on our own was I had, from the time I was at Casey's, I had started buying and selling, young prospects to be able to build up what I was able to own myself. And we had she was 3 when we went out on our own, Genuinely Joe. And that was really the only horse we had in 2019. And she was a great horse. I won the level 2 Futurity at the Congress, made the level 3 finals at the Futurity. She was a super good mare. And we were offered a lot of money for her as a 3-year-old. So this is, 2019. We were just hadn't even really started our business yet. This was the one horse we had. And we were offered a lot of money. And, it took a lot of guts to turn that down because we certainly needed the money at the time. But we both felt like, she was kind of our ticket. And if we sold her and, we didn't have anything to show, we wouldn't be relevant. And our business wouldn't take off. So we made that kind of bold decision to not take the money and keep her. And I mean, it ended up being the best decision we made because several of our customers, they told me, they saw us with that horse and they decided to send us, horses. So I think that's you can't rely on somebody else to invest in you. You have to invest in yourself first. And if you're not willing to invest in yourself, then how can you expect somebody else to? So we made our career very early on, owning horses, buying and selling them, sometimes not selling them and hanging on to them, turning the money down in order just to have that opportunity. And that's what's, gotten us here.
It's really incredible to listen to you speak because you are talking about going out on your own. And in 2019, that was 5 years ago. I mean, you are so young in your career still, but you have accomplished so much in the 5 years that you both have gone out on your own. And it sounds like you took some gambles by keeping horses and not selling them when, most people who are that young and starting their business would just see that the dollar signs and be like, I need this to survive, right? Because horse trainers, they don't get they don't get paid time off. They don't get insurance. They don't get, all this other stuff. So when that kind of deal comes around, it's very attractive to people who are young in their career and just are trying to make a living. But it sounds like it was a gamble that really paid off. And talk about being so strategic in your business and not just in the training and the riding portion of showing.
Yeah, and I think, we've done that a lot. Like we've sold horses even for less money than that they were worth, and we could have sold them for a lot more money to sell them outside of the barn. We had partnered on horses just to keep the horse. I mean, our goal, like our priority, I guess, for a better word, has always been just having really good horses to ride and show. And that's 100% like we has led to the success that we've had, because I mean, we've hung on to horses that we knew we needed. I mean, in the very beginning, I mean, it's kind of funny, like we didn't have a lot of horses the very first year, but we would take the 2-year-olds to the horse show and ride them around just so people believed that we had, oh, they've got a lot of horses and whatever. And it made people send us more horses. And, or truly, really, we brought the 2-year-olds because Jack and I, like, we're like workaholics, and we couldn't imagine going to the horse show with like just 2 or 3 show horses. Like we have to be busy all the time. So we'd bring the 2-year-olds just to keep riding them and just because we liked it. But it also worked on the business side because it was like, you go to the horse show with, 10, 12 horses and you're busy all the time and you're on a horse all the time. Like, people watch and they're like, oh, they're really working hard. Like they're really doing something. If you go to the horse show with 2 horses and you're sitting in front of your stalls with nothing to do, it doesn't have the same kind of, look. And we're just not that way. I mean, we truly believe in like, working our tails off for everything. So, I mean, that's how we did it. Just me and him, we'd go to the show. I mean, we'd clean the stalls. I've been to horse shows like, and we were getting Jack's visa in the very beginning. And, I took 10 horses to the Tulsa show, just me, did everything, cleaned the stalls, schooled, coached people at night, like everything. And it was definitely a grind, but I mean, I've never felt like we were above it for sure.
I love hearing your story. I knew a little bit about it just from what you've spoken about in other interviews, but I just think it's so inspiring and impactful to hear somebody who has seen so much success, and you came from that horse show world, and you've been around some really nice horses and some really great training programs, but you're putting in the work, you're doing it, you're paying attention to everything that's happening outside of the show pen with, wanting people to see your work ethic and how you run your program and all of these things. I think it's just so incredible.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, it definitely means a lot to be noticed, but we definitely, my husband, when we started, like, we were just talking about it the other day, like when we started, he said in 5 years, I want us to be like, not fully where we want to be, but I want us to be like it, like I want us to be there. And, I want us to like be set up, be established, be level 4 trainers. And, 5 years later, here we are, I guess.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the present time, because you obviously just had the most historic run at this year's Futurity, the last winner in the Jim Norick, and the first female to ever win the level 4 Futurity. Can you talk a little bit about what that win means to you? Especially, I mean, we're talking about all these things. We're not even mentioning the fact that you've only been out on your own for 5 years, and there are trainers who have probably been, going for years. I mean, to be able to do all of this at such a young age and to defeat all these odds that were against you, like, let's talk about it.
I mean, it was truly surreal, but I mean, like, if you're in the reining and especially at the open level, I mean, I think most trainers, when you listen to, I have that song Run for the Roses on my phone, and whenever you hear it, like sometimes I couldn't listen to it because I'd like, didn't want to like get choked up or something, but you hear it and you imagine yourself, being in that spot with the Run for the Roses playing, the spotlight, feeling like, everything finally came together. And like I said, I've been there when Kaci got to do it, and I was there when Craig got to do it. And it was such an incredible experience, even just being on that team that did win. I didn't know if I would ever get to experience that or if that would ever happen. Of course, you dream it'll happen, and that's what we work towards. But I had no idea if that was, like you said, people work their entire lives to get that. And it's not just about having the best horse or being the best rider. It's literally about everything just lining up just right and just happening. And part of it's fate, I think. But it just, to have it felt like that whole week was, it was just very surreal. The whole time at the Futurity, it just felt like things kind of fell into place. And then to have it actually happen, when my run itself was very, it was, I don't know how to describe it. It definitely felt a little out of body experience. And then when I finished the run and I got off, I just looked at my team and they were going crazy, and I looked at the crowd and I could see them standing up, and I'm like, was that really, like, I think it was good, but like, was it really that good? And then when they said the score, I just was like, is this even happening? Like, is this happening right now? Because it doesn't, I didn't expect it. I knew I had a really good horse, but again, everything has to just line up perfectly. So, and of course I knew, being the first woman to do it, it's definitely something I dreamed of. I knew it was like out there for, no one had done it yet, but I didn't really know that, there's other really great women trainers. I didn't really know that it would be me, to be able to do that. But it just, it's just an absolute dream come true.
So you're so right about some of it being a little bit of fate, right? For people who don't follow the reining as closely, the NRHA Futurity is an event for 3-year-olds, but to make it into the finals, you have to show 2 other times. You have the prelims and then the semifinals, and then you have your finals run. And to have 3 consistent, incredible runs on a 3-year-old that's been at a horse show for 2 weeks. It's a lot. It's not just getting the horse in the show pen. It is truly a marathon. Can you talk a little bit about how you kept the firemen? I would imagine that you were kind of just riding him, in the prelims and the semis to be good enough to make the finals without peaking him before that finals happened.
Yeah, and truly, like, it's a strategy for sure. I've made the level 4 finals 2 times before this, and it's really rare to have a horse that you feel like you can not ask everything for. Nowadays it's so competitive to get to the finals that most of the time, you have to just try to make 2 really, really good runs, like have the best runs you can. And then, you get to the finals, and it's hard because then, you've used up all your horse just to get there. And that's a lot of times that is the case. Like this year, I knew I had a very talented horse, and I think more importantly, this horse in particular, like when you ask him for a little bit, he gives you a lot. So you don't have to ask him for everything he can possibly do. And he's got so much, look, and that's what you really hope for in finding a 3-year-old. But my goal with him was just to keep him in a really good mental space and keep him really quiet. I had done, before leading up to the show, like I had kind of had a strategy when we got there. I rode him several times, like without spurs and a Hackmore, and I would build him up, 2 days before the go, I would, build him up and put pressure on him. And then the day before I'd take it off and try to get him to relax a little bit and, come back down just where he was kind of in that sweet spot. But credit to him. He just was amazing, because you have no idea on those poor horses. Not poor horses, I don't mean that, but those 3-year-olds, they get to that horse show, and if you can imagine, you're you're trying to get as much as you can out of them. You know, you go in your first go, they're there in the lights for 2 weeks. You've got, you know, we were pulling him out to shockwave him, to laser him. You know, we're doing everything to take care of him, but, you know, the horse doesn't really get a lot of time to himself. So some horses, you know, they can get a little agitated or a little sick of it or tired or, you know, just sour on seeing people. You know, they just want to be left alone. And gosh, like the more, like he just, like even on finals day, I mean, he was just so happy and content. You know, he sleeps really well at the horse shows. That horse does. Like he doesn't worry. He just sleeps all the time, which is great. And you know, he loved, like when we laser him, like he loves it. So he actually really enjoys that time. Like he likes being pampered. He likes his mane being braided. Some horses get annoyed at it. He really loves it. So I really think that helps. I mean, but that's all part of your strategy is beyond even the riding and the showing is knowing your horse and knowing like those horses need time to themselves. You know, they need to be left alone. They got to have plenty of shavings in their stall so they're not, you know, on the concrete. They've got to be, you know, you've got to balance how often you're getting them out with making sure that you're not just annoying them. So, I mean, there's a whole list of things to try to, you know, we take them to the spa, you know, everything we can do to make sure that they're comfortable and happy. Like that's the number one goal of the strategy. Even take the training part out of it. I mean, just their mental state is really a huge part of preparing one at that show.
Something else that you had mentioned in some other interviews was how loud the Jim Norick was on finals night when you were competing, and being able to check in with him and just kind of him coming back to you and just being like, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm with you. Like, can you kind of talk a little bit about that and just know it? You just like, it's almost like you guys have such a great communication, and you obviously, you know how to read a horse, and you were able to know that he was there with you and then ask for that extra, like just extra, because you knew he was there and he wasn't going to do something to, you know, kind of put you in the penalty box.
Yeah. I mean, that's what honestly, like, that's what I was most happy with at the end of my run. But I mean, you know, he was really good in the first two goes. I mean, he was great mentally, but I mean, I knew, you know, like we'd already made 2 runs, like it's the end of the show, the energy's kind of up, like, and he's a very like electric horse. So he's very sensitive. So I anticipated, you know, with the crowd and the environment that he would be a little more elevated because of that. You know, I stuck to my plan. I got him out in the morning. And I rode him over in barn 6. The nice thing I do kind of like is like they broadcast the announcing even in the warm up pen. So your horse is kind of used to hearing the noise a little. And I like that they do that. But I like brought him over to barn 6 without my spurs and just like loped him around and got him really quiet, put him away. And when I got him out to warm him up, I just tried to check check our systems and just check everything. And he was giving me all, you know, the green light. I wanted to have him in that little makeup pen right outside the Coliseum a little early so that he could get used to the noise, because you can hear, you know, the crowd from the warm-up pen. But he was just, you know, really relaxed in the warm-up pen. I mean, he was walking around he didn't seem to react when he heard the crowd or anything. So that gave me a little bit of confidence. But I mean, when I ran in, like when I hit the gate, I mean, it was like, wow, like it was like a wall that hit you of just sound. And when I stopped and backed up, when I got to the middle, like I stop, I back up, I get to the center, and I was waiting for him to like vibrate because, you know, he's, like I said, he's an electric horse, and he was just as calm as could be. Like he was literally just sitting there, just waiting, like, okay, what next? And I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, I'm like, you know, he's still here. And he turned great, shut him off, same thing. He was just waiting, like, okay. what next? And, I remember like when I loped off, I took a couple extra steps walking just to like, just give him a second. Like, we're not going to rush into anything. We're going to really take our time. And then in my first circle, I was kind of like checking in and out with him throughout the circle. Like, I would push on him and then I'd be like, oh, like, are you still there? And he'd be like, yeah, I'm here. Don't really know what you're worried about. I'd push him a little more. And then I'm like, oh, everything's still good. Yep, we're still good. And so, that's really how it felt, especially through the circles, was I was just like, gauging, how much can I push him? Like, how much, someone, had told me beforehand, reminded me like, hey, you don't need to go in and go all out to do well on that horse. Like, you just need to go in there and be smooth. And so that's what I had told myself going in. And like I said, he's such a dynamic horse that you can ask a little and get a lot. And, I knew I had my stops in there. So I circled and they, plus half both circles. I think he's capable of +1, but I think just the risk versus reward of like, okay, I run his wheels off and I might, incur a penalty somewhere or something. And so I just, he was great. And then, I knew we had the stops and that's kind of his best thing. So he didn't miss a stop that entire horse show. Which is very rare. I don't know how often that's happened, but I mean, he was just great every single stop. And so I just pushed him down there and, he took care of me. And the last stop was might have been our best one. I mean, and yeah, it was just awesome. I mean, I think that's what reining should feel like.
And yeah, I mean, the whole, you keep saying that he's a very electric horse, but your run was like electric. I mean, it was like you couldn't stop watching even during the slower parts of it was just, everything was perfect about it. And at the end of it, there was a standing ovation, which, I mean, it gave me chills watching, because it's not every day that people are so amped about a run that they are jumping out of their seats, like cheering.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, that happens for the people who are in your barn, obviously they're excited, but like for random people in the audience to just be like, holy cow, that was the winner. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, that was the most incredible feeling. I mean, I really felt like throughout the run, I could, especially going to my last stop, I could hear people like, urging me on and stuff. And it was just so cool because it felt like the whole community was kind of behind us and with us throughout the run. And it was just like, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what it's supposed to be. Like, this is the most amazing feeling. I mean, that's what we chase. That's what, to be truthful with you, that's what gets you through the hard days, is envisioning something like that. And, the feelings that you get when you're training at home and a horse gives you a glimpse of something, kind of magical. And you're like, oh, this is what we're after. Like that run, like in my mind, like that's what, when you're having a tough day or whatever, and you think like, that's what I'm trying to achieve. Like that was it.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Fireman. This is obviously the horse that led you to your historic Futurity run. You and your husband picked him out at a pretty young age. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys got him into your program? And it sounds like your husband might have worked with him as a 2-year-old, and then you took him over a little later in his 2-year-old year, maybe?
Yeah. So we went down to, Tamarack Ranch in Burleson, Texas. They raise a lot of really, really, really good horses. I mean, we always go there every year, to try to get some, good young horses for our program. But, we had talked to Gabe and Susie, who own Tamarack Ranch, about, maybe partnering on a horse. So, we were looking for another one for a client as well, but they had said, well, come down, look through the pasture, see what you like. Well, they have a lot of really beautiful young horses, like always, great mares. So we're in the colt pasture and we're looking, and they had just moved from Oregon. So, the last of the horses from Oregon had just kind of gotten there, and there had been some that had been down in Texas, were like shed out, bloomed, big, beautiful. And, lot of really pretty horses, but there was a, smaller one, and he was a little hairy because he'd been in Oregon, and he'd just gotten down there. He was a late baby. And they told me, it's the Inferno out of Red Hot Walla, and he had a look about him. He had that one blue eye, and he was hung his neck really pretty, and he loped really pretty. And so Jack and I both liked that one. We told Gabe and Susie, hey, that's the one we really, really want. Well, they said, well, that one's out of J-Lo. If he sells, we got to sell him, but we'll just see in a couple months. If we, haven't sold him yet, then, we might do something. Well, I didn't think there was a chance that we were going to get him. I thought for sure someone was going to buy him. But they called us, right before the Futurity that year, and they said, well, you can come pick him up. So I told Jack, I'm like, get in the truck right now. We're going to pick him up before they change their mind. We brought him home, and starting him, Jack did all the work with him. He was and Jack had actually, part of the reason we picked him out was he did not train, but he had ridden, Tiago's mother, Red Hot Walla, when she was at Craig Schmerzel's. Craig won the High Roller Reining Classic, the 4-year-old stakes with her, and Jack had ridden her a little bit, and he loved her, but she was a very, also a very electric horse. And so when we started Tiago, he was very super reactive. A little wild, just not tough by any means, but just very reactive and very sensitive, very smart. And so, I think he's a horse, if you would have taken a different approach with him, I think you might have overloaded his brain a little bit. But, Jack just really spent a lot of time with him. We did all the groundwork with him for a long time. Took him on, rode him outside a lot, took him on a lot of trail rides, and just did, even early on, when we were first teaching him to turn around to spin, he would always try to spin, 10 times faster than what he knew how to do. And so it was always just trying to just calm him down, teach him to do things slow before, doing them fast. And, so that was I thought, Jack definitely is a huge reason of why that horse ended up being really good. And Jack had believed in him the whole time. He said he was special the whole time. End of July, August, he started doing things that were really physical, really cool. And, Jack said, I think this one's really special. We really need to try to keep him. And, so around the fall, I had actually, one day he had too many to ride, and he told me, hey, you can get on him for the day and just lope him around. He just needs an easy day. And that horse, as electric as he is very quiet, loping around and stuff. He's extremely slow loping, really fun. So I was having a blast, and I was smiling, and we always joke. He's like, hey, quit smiling on my horse, quit stealing my horse. Well, I stole him. And he never really got him back. So that kind of worked out well for me anyways. And then, in the end of October, we had our customers, Peter and Courtney Morgan, who had been with us since the very beginning. And we just told them, we said, hey, I think this is our best 2-year-old. This is the best one. We want you guys to have him. We want you guys to have the best one. And, they trusted us totally, and they bought him. And, that's where the journey started, really.
I think your whole story, yes, the Futurity, like you said, sometimes it's just fate, right? You can put in all the work and all that, but it sounds like this whole story is just fate. It sounds, it's just crazy to hear how, you got this horse because he ended up not being sold when, your husband had ridden her mom. There's just, or his mom, I'm sorry. And it's just so crazy to think about how, this story is insane.
Yeah, it definitely felt the whole thing kind of felt like fate. I mean, and early on, like I told them, like I really felt then when Peter and Courtney bought him that he was really special. He was what set him apart was that, usually when a horse is that quick footed and that agile and that athletic and that reactive, usually they're a little hot. And he's not, he's a great loper and he was amazing minded and he was so quick to learn. But also that like athletic and that quick. And that's what really made him feel different. Like he felt like more horse than what we had ever really had before. And, we'd had some really nice horses in our program before. But he just felt like special. Early on as a 3-year-old, even in the springtime, like, and we told them, when they bought that horse, the whole reason we were doing it was so that we would get to keep him and show him, like that was the whole thing. And we trusted them, completely. And, about by the NRBC of his 3-year-old year in April, it was there had been some talk and I think people had started to consider him to be one of the top 3-year-olds in the country. And we'd got, some offers on him trying to buy him. And, to Peter and Courtney's credit, they said, no, we're in it for the long haul. We want to show him. We got offered a lot of money for him. And he was just such a great student. I mean, he's just like nothing you've ever ridden before. I mean, it just felt like he understood the goal, like he understood the game. He understood what we were trying to achieve. He wanted to learn. He wanted, and the only time he'd get frustrated if he didn't feel like he knew the answer or if he didn't feel like he was right. He was like the straight A student that like got really mad if they got a B, that was him. And so he was, super fun, to train the whole time. He's like nothing else. And so our first show was in Tulsa at the Invitational. And, that's a class, it's a pre-fraternity. We do typically like 2 pre-fraternities before the main fraternity. And really the goal of pre-fraternities is figuring the horses out, like figuring out how to get them ready, what they need, what kind of horses they are, what kind of show horses they are. But having said that, there's a lot of money in those pre-fraternities now. And so it's challenging to keep that in mind that they're babies and it's their first time out and not to have too high of expectations. And it was really hard with him because we did have really high expectations and, we felt like he had a really good chance at doing really well at that pre-fraternity that first time out. Well, I didn't fully, I just didn't know him yet as far as like how to get him ready, what he needed. And, I took him in, I put him in a snaffle. He was, in those early first fraternities, you can show either 2-handed in a snaffle or 1-handed in a bridle. Well, we've been riding in a bridle for, 8 months by that point, but sometimes it can be, in my mind, sometimes it can be an advantage if you're going to show them 2-handed because you can go back and you can help them a little bit and hide some things. Well, that's the decision I made that day. But in hindsight, he was very broke. He was perfectly capable of, doing patterns in the snaffle. In the bridle. So anyway, we had a big break of gate penalty. And so that kind of was a little bit surprising because he was so nice and he was so broke. So, we come out and it wasn't quite the result that we wanted. And, the owner, Peter Morgan, said to me, at that point, they could have been not so gracious. Not that it was bad, not that the horse was bad. It just, there were high expectations. And, they said, you know what? I'm so glad that happened here. That's great. You guys are going to take him home. You're going to figure out what you need to do. And we're going to be, the goal is the fraternity. And we kept saying that the whole fall. The goal is the fraternity. That's our goal. And they got offered a lot of money after that show to sell him again. And they didn't. And I'll forever be grateful to them for that. But we took him home and, we worked on, sometimes those pre-fraternities, you can figure out where the holes in your training might have been. And so we addressed all those. I took him to a little show in Waco about 2 weeks later, and I just took me, him, one of my assistants, and like 2 other horses down there. And we spent 3 or 4 days. I was like, I'm not leaving here until, I figured him out and I figured out what to do. And, I took him in probably like 4 or 5 times in the show pen. And at the end of the week was a little futurity, and I took him in there, and, he just cruised him through, and he was a 147.5, and he won the futurity there. And, I, called Peter and I showed him the trophy, and I said, okay, I feel like I've got him figured out now. I know what I need to do. And, I think we're good for the Congress. So, from there we went to the Quarter Horse Congress. He was great. Like, I took him in the first go, and he was exactly like I hoped he would be. We were 219. We made the finals. We actually got 4 of our fraternity horses back, all of our fraternity horses back to the finals at the Congress. But that was a little bit of a challenging show for us. We had really bad luck. We had our best Derby horse colicked and had to be put down at the horse show. Like, it was just a whole emotional roller coaster. And all of our horses in the finals, they were all super good, but they all just had something. It just felt like luck wasn't on our side. Like, we had something happen to everybody, and, we slid in a slowdown. Again, we had a great run in the finals. We would have, without the penalty, we would have been like, second. And, he slid in the slowdown. And again, I come out and, Peter and Courtney, they said, oh, he looked fantastic. He looked wonderful. So glad that happened here, because, go figure it out, go work on it. And, then it won't happen at the fraternity. And, again, they were just so supportive and wonderful. And so, we took him to the Southwest, and we just schooled. So we just go in, not trying to mark a score, not trying to win. You're just, practicing. And then got a plan for the last 3 weeks before the fraternity.
Sounds like it's so nice that you have such a great relationship with the horses owners. It's not, you've taken gambles by not selling horses and it's worked out. They took a gamble by not selling this horse, and clearly it worked out for everybody. How cool it is that they've been with you from the beginning and they trust you. And when you had a bobble, they were so right though. Like, you had it happen at the right show, go home, go work on it. And I mean, obviously it all worked out for the best scenario.
Yeah. And I just I think if only everyone could understand how special that is, and how that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, they're 3-year-olds. It's their first couple shows. It is expensive to take them there. They are expensive entry fees, but how important it is to remember that they're learning, we're learning, they're not machines, they're animals. And, and to keep the horse's whole career in mind, even the 3-year-old year, I even told him, I said, even if he doesn't do good at the fraternity, I said, this horse, he has a great run in him. He can be great, I think, whenever that is. I don't know when that is, but he will be. And they trusted us, and they saw the same things we did in him. And, to be able to, some horses, they just need their time. They just needed to work out. And I mean, I'm just so thankful that they were able to, they've been in the industry for a while. They've seen a lot. So, they were able to just say, you know what, we're here for the ride, and we're here for the journey. And that's what's important.
Well, and it sounds like you're really setting up the firemen for success for a really long career as well, by not trying to force anything to happen, and try and run every time you go in the arena. And, this horse is only 3. He has a huge Derby career ahead of him. I mean, it sounds like you're just truly trying to set him up to have a long, healthy, longevitive career. And, I love hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important to us. And I'm so thankful, that this happened. But I've even told him, I said, I even think he has, I think he can he has more in there. I mean, I don't feel like we left the Futurity with, I don't think we left our horse in Oklahoma City. Like, I mean, he came out even after the finals. I mean, he felt like he could have done it again. I mean, he just felt like happy. He enjoyed the whole time, everybody petting on him afterwards, like he loved it. But he just felt like, all right, like let's do it. And like that's important. I want him to have, I know that horse has really good runs in the future. He's got 4 Derby years left and hopefully even more after that. So that's what going forward, that's what we're thinking of. We're going to kind of make a plan of where to show him, next year and where we think he can do really well and try not to overuse him and just try to be strategic in what we do.
Let's talk a little bit about the future, because your Futurity win skyrocketed you in earnings for the year and put you in the standings to compete in the American Performance Horseman that's taking place next July. You won, not only did you win the level 4, but correct, you also won the level 3 as well, right?
Yep.
So you came home with a really lovely paycheck that helped you get up there in the earnings. Let's talk a little bit about it. I think you're also the first female reiner to compete in the American Performance Horseman.
Yeah, I think so.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Are you like, I'm sure like in the back of your head, you obviously knew that this win would boost you in year-end earnings, but were you even thinking about the American Performance Horseman?
Oh no. Like it wasn't even something I was like thinking about. And I remember after we won, it was just so hectic. And I came around the corner to go to the warm-up pen to get on my horse for the Run for the Roses. And a nice gentleman stopped me and he shook my hand. And he said, "I'm from Teton Ridge, and I just want to tell you that you've unofficially qualified for the American Performance Horseman." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's unexpected. Like I didn't even think about it." But I mean, I've been to it. Like what a cool event, like a cool stage. I'm so excited, to get to compete there with like such other great horsemen and women.
So I am looking forward to it. I think I might even be there next year. So I can't wait to hopefully
awesome.
cheer you on in person. But before we end this call, I think it was Steve Ross, and I hope I'm correct when I say this. He asked you what you wanted to say to the little girls that were watching you in your win, and obviously seeing you perform at huge stages, like hopefully, at the American Performance Horseman next year. And I loved your answer, because I grew up in this industry as well. And I've been told the same things that you were told. And it makes me so happy that you didn't let that get you down, and you pursued, and you didn't look at yourself any differently than anybody else who's starting in their professional career. And can you talk a little bit about, what it is you want little girls to know and see?
So, I mean, the first year that I obviously the few people, I was really hesitant, like when I was 15, 16, to tell people that I wanted to train. I mean, I think I was afraid of, what they would say. I didn't really want to, I knew they probably weren't going to tell me, that that's what I should do. And I had several people tell me, I was silly and whatever. And I just never really listen. I can truly say I never changed my mind about what I wanted to do. But my first year as a professional, I had someone really important that I really looked up to. I received a lot of pressure and saying hey, you need to go back to school, which I did finish my bachelor's online while I was working for Kaci. But, say, hey, why don't you go be a non-pro? Why don't you go do, this or that? And then you can, think of how much money you can make, being a non-pro, and not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I totally respect the ladies and the guys who are phenomenal horsemen who are non-pros. I just knew I wanted to train horses for a living, and that's what I wanted to do. And tell me how hard it is to be a girl and do this. And, I truly never let it change. Like I would listen to them and kind of nod and be like, you're welcome to your opinion. That's fine. But it's not going to change what I'm going to do. And I think, no one but you knows what's inside of you. People can make their assumptions and they can give opinions, but nobody knows what's like really inside of you. And, I've always wanted to hopefully be gracious and not be, not come off as arrogant or anything like that, and just try to be really quiet in that sense of what I wanted. Like, I didn't want to go around telling everybody that I was going to dominate the world or anything, but I wanted to, you have to be confident and know what's inside of you. And confidence was something that I had to learn. I mean, it took me a very long time to learn it, and I'm still not always there. But I think it's just knowing that nothing is, being fully determined, being like, I don't care if I have to work, how hard I have to work for this. But I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm going to take the leaps of faith. But I find like seeing other young people and other young girls going into this, and they just like, they struggle a lot with like the stick with itness. Like, maybe it's grit, like, don't go into anything you want to be really good at it. Like, don't go into it expecting just to be happy all the time, or life to be great all the time, or success to come easy, because it doesn't. And I don't care if you're doing what you love or not. Like, you're going to have days that it's going to be hard to get up and get out there. You're going to have days where, you don't feel so great about yourself, or you don't feel like you're moving forward. And those are the days that like matter, because you just keep pushing through, and you just say, I'm just going to keep going no matter what. I'm going to keep trying to elevate myself. I'm going to keep trying to move forward. And if, the only way you can fail is if you quit. So, I mean, that's kind of been my motto, I guess.
I think it's a great motto. And I hope people can take away something from that, because it doesn't matter if you're a horse trainer. It doesn't matter if, whatever your profession is, there are those hard days, but you've just got to keep grinding and getting through it, and knowing that you're doing what you're loving. So, for those who want to follow along on your journey and just keep up with you guys as you continue to just, smash records and continue to have this insanely talented program of horses that you guys have, where can they follow along on social media or online?
Yeah, thank you. So on Facebook, I have my own Facebook page, but we're Pond Hill Performance Horses, and that's where you can find, pretty much everything that's going on. I think on Instagram, we're also Pond Hill Performance Horses. And then on TikTok, it's Pond Hill Perf Horses. But I think, and we're going to be starting, we've kind of soft launched it, but we're starting, kind of members service deal that will have, behind the scenes, and it will have, instructional videos. We shot a bunch of those, in the last couple of months, and we're just working on getting them edited and posted and stuff. So, we love to hear, feedback. We love to hear, what everybody wants to see, what they want to learn. Send us ideas. On our website is pondhillperformancehorses.com, and our breeding website is pondhillmares.com. So, a lot of that information will be on there too, but, we definitely appreciate the, people keeping up with us and following along.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I know it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks, and on top of that, we have the holidays creeping up on us. So I really appreciate you giving up some of your busy time to talk with us.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Ride Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media, and find us at horseandrider.com to see all the cool things that we're up to. And if you have any comments or questions, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com. We want to hear from you guys. And if you like what you're listening to, please be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.